on Business Security Weekly. Each week, we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communications to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I have here with me Mr. Larry Pesci. Larry, welcome. And Miss Mandy Logan.
Hello, everybody.
Good to have you both. A quick announcement before we get started. You are invited to InfoSec World 2024 at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida, from September 23rd through the 25th. Join top cybersecurity experts for this premier event. Save 25% on your pass by using the code ISW24-SW25 when you register at securityweekly.com/InfoSec World 2024. Don't miss out on this exclusive opportunity. Today, we're talking about RFID hacking with none other than Christian Herman, better known throughout the hacker community as Iceman, is the co-founder of RRG and helped produce many of the most common RFID research tools available today, including the Proxmark 3, RDV4, and Chameleon Mini. He is the RFID hacking and Proxmark 3 evangelist, serving the RFID community in many different ways, presentations, forums administration, all kinds of stuff. You got to start doing .NET platforms, and has now transitioned into doing RFID and NFC hacking full time. Iceman, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you, man. Thanks for doing the show with us. I'm super excited as I like to, of course, tinker around with all the RFID and NFC tools that are out there. Larry has a lot more experience hands-on than I do, so
we were joking before the show that I pulled out one of these drawers and Iceman says, how many flipper zeros do you have in that drawer? I'm like, 2, and I'm realizing it'd be embarrassing to pull out the RFID drawer. It's a little buried behind some stuff over here, so maybe I'll pull that out and just embarrass myself.
I feel you.
So
it's a gadget thing.
Right. You've got to have lots of gadgets. So Iceman, how did you get your start like in the RFID hacking space? Because this is like your thing, right? Like when people tell me to buy a particular piece of hardware, they're like, go get the Iceman firmware, make sure it works on there. And like, what is Iceman? Who is it? Oh, Iceman's a person.
It's a myth. It's a legend. It doesn't
Right?
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel you. I tend to just say that I'm stumbled into this world. It's I never attended conferences like DEF CON and all that stuff, but I went through a rough patch in my life. So I was getting divorced or separation from, and I was kind of in a dark place. As I tend to tell this story about how I ended up, and it's like that. So I always done computers, right? And I'm pretty sure that you understand the feeling of, you always hacked and done all this computer stuff for your whole life. And then you do it as it work, and then you lose a little bit interest with it, right? And I, 2013, decided that I want to bring some joy back in my life. And I was like, there was this article in the newspapers about the local bus transportation ticket system being hacked, and it's Mifare Classic. And they were doing this RFID hacking. And I was like, oh, naughty. This is curious, it's like it triggered my interest a little bit. So I go like online and search for things. You go to these odd sites called Alibaba and Taobao, but nowadays everybody knows about it. But back in the days, it was like, oh, dodgy. And you order this circuit board, this embedded too. It's like Proxmark. It's like, oh yeah, it's expensive. It's crazy. It was $300 all back in the days as well. And you order one. So I get that device delivered 2 weeks later on, and I I don't know very much about embedded. I mean, I've been doing Windows development and .NET and there's things there. Embedded world is completely different. So I never did flashing and setting up Linux environment for all that stuff there. I've never done that. So enthusiastic as I was, full of energy, it's like, yay, I'm gonna do this. You start downloading this Sigwin and Ming V environment, this Linux Lite on Windows, and I failed. You download these dependencies and that, and doesn't work, and paths, and you don't have no idea why, and it's like, ugh. And you go on there's a forum we call the Proxmark Free Forum back in the days, if where everybody was talking about it, the old school people was there, Sam Kankar, Adam Laurie, all those, the good ones, right, was there. And you go online and you're like, so how do I do that? And we always get those questions. So the first thing they ask you is like, did you read the manual? And I'm like, hell no, because I'm a developer. I should be able to do this.
I just intrinsically know these things. Don't ask. Don't
I'm
suggest
bred like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I can suck up the knowledge by touching it,
I put the computer under my pillow while I slept. Yes.
Yeah, we were talking
Complete
about that, how
osmosis.
there's, like there's times for trial and error, and there's times to read the documentation. And I think as we get more experience, we learn to know how much time to spend in each of those areas, right?
Yeah. So I failed miserable, and I didn't do the guide, and I was so disappointed, because you all figure up and then you fail. So I pack it down again, and I put it on the shelf up there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like how you have this love-hate relationship with a cat who despises you? It lays up there on the shelf and and looks down at you, and you looks up and it reminds you what a failure you are. You have that, and I wasn't ready to learn yet. So I had this feeling sitting there in this office here, I was like, oh God, that's my bad confidence,
Mm.
And then it took me about 6 months before I was like, okay, but I spent so much money on it. It was a ridiculous amount of money. Let's just download the guide, follow the guide, and it installs. I'm like, oh, that's good. And you compile, and it compiles.
Mm.
And then it's like, flashing. What the fuck is flashing? I'm sorry if it's a PG thing.
No, you're good.
Embedded world. It's like, oh yeah, you can actually brick it. What the fuck? So you go like, okay, I do that. And it works. Like, oh, cool. That's okay. Now I should be entering my client. And I get into this dark terminal things. It's Proxmark. I'm like, ooh, where's my bus ticket? Because I know this is it.
Mm.
So I take out the bus tram card, put it on my Proxmark, and run this command called darkside. So it's HFMF darkside. It's one of the famous attacks back in the days. Nowadays, we're much better ones. We don't do them that much. So I ran that command, and it takes a while. So the suspense takes up to average 25 seconds. Mine took about 27 seconds, and then pop comes the first key. And I can remember to this day, it's like, I got to know more. The dopamine kick of that first key I cracked was like, and that's it. And that's how I ended up here.
I was gonna say you're still clearly riding that same
I was going to
dopamine
say,
high.
but you're riding that high. It just keeps going. Yes.
It turns out RFID hacking is a tremendous big area, which people can't understand. Nor did I in the beginning, because I always thought it was like a small little niche thing. And everybody thinks it's a niche thing. And until you realize you actually do everything, all layers of OSI model, you do everything from crypto to data mapping to understanding bytes, binary conversions, and everything. And I'm like, I know a lot of stuff, but I don't know this much. And then you start reading and learning and being more active, and you realize that the software, because I'm a software guy in the beginning, how good software, how you would like to work with software. So it's a side story I have to just tell, because back in the days, really back in the days, OGs people, if you couldn't decode a signal manually and decrypt it to get the bytes out and descramble it and, get the data out, the ID out from an LF tag, you are not worthy, right? End of story. Fair income. It's pretty high level to get to that. And I know it by now, and, you had to learn it by then, but it's just nasty. I was like, I can't work like this. This is not how I would like my software to work like. So you do this, and it's like, no, if I'm going to research things, I can't do this manually over and over and over again. It just doesn't work. So I started changing things. And then the repo and GitHub, all that stuff, and the people who maintain it have their own visions about it, and we were like, okay, and we didn't quite like my changes.
No,
So
Yeah. So Iceman,
clarification.
yeah, was it? Sorry, Mandy. Was it Proxmark that
Yeah, that was
maintained? Yeah, was that your
okay.
question too?
That
Yeah,
was my question
it
as
was the
well.
company
Yeah.
that makes the hardware also made the
That's
firmware
what
for it.
repos were you? Okay.
yeah. So the Proxmark has a hardware part, a client part, that runs on computer, and there's also an FPGA image on the hardware that you also do. So it's like 3 different software parts of it, and it all interacts together, and it's kind of complex, but made it simpler. It was very easy to brick things back in the days, and stuff didn't work, and it failed, and it was a nasty experience, user experience. So I started doing things, and I realized, how about if I fork it? I can impose all my changes how I like to work with it, and I keep it updated and maintain with the latest changes from official ones, and my stuff worked a little bit better, and then the people started coming. If you build it, the people will come.
Right.
But it was for me. It's like I want to. This is how I want to use the software, and then other people start using it because it worked. It didn't break that much, and things. It was more stable, because it was nasty before, and from there it just builds up. So that's where the Iceman fork comes from, and that's why everybody talks about Iceman all the time, is because of that
But I think
fork.
that's really encouraging, Iceman, because I think many of us that want to start on something completely new go through the same process that you went through, right? Like super frustrated, put it down, and then I got to come back to it. And I think it's encouraging that hey, like it is possible for you to go out and learn stuff. You got to put the work in, and then go. I don't like how that is working, so I'm going to create my own things around it. I mean, in your case, a completely new or forked firmware from it, which is also encouraging, right? And then you build a community around it, which is great. I want Iceman, if you could take folks that are new to RFID and NFC, talk about like at a high level. If you could give us just like a lay of the land of RFID and NFC and what the differences are and some of the different types for those just getting into it, right?
All right, so it's a very common question, and people usually come into the Discord. We were on the forum before, now we're on Discord, so there's a lot of people there on the Discord. Come join it, discord.gg/Iceman. You're welcome. And
And it's
here's
awesome. It's awesome.
it is awesome. It's good discussions there. So yeah, the thing is, there was YouTube. The Flipper Zero made an RFID guide or a note that it covers quite well for entry levels or the beginners. So usually we recommend that one nowadays. But here's the thing: RFID is a passive thing of doing it. Everybody has a hotel card or a ticket or a bus ticket system, like this, and you present it to a reader, and the tag does its magic, and then the reader goes like, oh, I'm going to open the door. Same thing you go with paying, with touch and go for an Android phone. You touch the reader on the payment terminal, the reader goes, and then you're okay or you decline. And you go and wonder, why is that? Well, basically, you have 3 levels of it. You have low frequency, high frequency, and ultra high frequency technology. So the low frequency is the older stuff. So it began way back in the 70s, 80s. Some people want to take it back to the Second World War, where radio frequency identification, RFID, comes from. But we take it to the 1970s, where we actually developed this inductive way of talking to and power up a chip on IC without having any cables to it. So that's the
Right.
magic moonbeams.
That's
So
the magic of the chip on your card gets power from the reader.
yes, exactly. So the reader makes an electromagnetic field, so a flux field, and it's pretty close because that's how it works, and it's resonating in one of the frequencies. The low frequency is 125 kilohertz. The high frequency is 13.56 megahertz, and the ultra high bands is 800 to 900 megahertz, and a little bit difference up there. But what it does is, if you have an antenna matching on your card in that frequency coil, you present it into that magnetic field. The electron starts moving, because that's the law of Maxwell, third law of Maxwell, that if I'm moving a magnetic field, there's moving electrons. So this way, it means that you have some capacitors on here and a little IC, and it starts up and it starts doing what it does. and it communicates backwards by shortening out the power of a field. So imagine that this field has a certain level of power or voltage that's applied to it, right? So it shortens that out, and you can look at that. That's called amplified shift keying, ASK. So it's like on, off, on, off. So that's how it communicates. So that's where it starts. The low frequency tags are simple ones, so usually don't have a cryptology or anything like that, and that's way back in the times. Then the need for more powerful. So what you can see on RFID card, the high frequency card, is just a memory card. So it's like a USB stick, memory stick, but they added a way of talking to it without any cables. They added cryptology and access control on the cards, and then that's it, basically.
It's amazing to think like all the science and physics behind it, and everyone uses it in their everyday lives and has no idea like how much science is actually behind. Everyone goes into a hotel and you're just like assuming that it works. When it doesn't, people get frustrated with it. But it's crazy to think like that, how physics come into play to make it work.
It is. It is. And that's what I started, were curious. And like, how does this work? What is going on? So to circle back to the ultra high frequency, they can be, this is called passive. It doesn't have any power source itself. Ultra high frequency can also have semi-active and active, means that they have a battery connected to it and you can talk over 100 meters. So this means you have to be in the reader field, very close, proximity. That's why we always call prox cards, proximity cards, vicinity cards, stuff like that. But you see this everywhere. You see them everywhere. Membership cards, bus tickets, payments, parking, access control to your buildings, you name it. You find it everywhere. And it's also built in, like in the devices like Flipper Zero, like in the Proxmark, like in the Android phone or smartphones, the iPhones. And they always support different level of protocols. So on top of this, the physics, just the basic machines. On top of it, you have a layer of protocols and how to communicate accordingly, what you're communicating. So you have these different ISO standards, and they are a nightmare to just keep track of those.
Is that the primary difference between RFID and NFC? It's just a different protocol built on that layer, or is it more?
So basically, RFID
it gets worse. It gets worse.
Right.
It gets worse.
RFID is basically everything, right? It covers everything from everything. NFC is just high frequency. We're limited there first in that technology. And it also is a definition of how to communicate. So it has this what called MDF packages or MDF records onto it. And it acts and it can trigger things in your phone because of that message is there. But it's built on ISO standards, all of them. So in the NFC world, you have NFC A, NFC B, NFC V, and different types called tag type 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's just describing what ISO standard based upon which technology that talks high frequency. So NFC is a limit, it's a subset of RFID in my world.
Okay.
And some other people claims that NFC is the whole shaboom, and I'm just like, no, it's not.
Yeah. So sort of the way I equate it is that it's kind of like looking at like the OSI stack, that you've got the physics down below, and then you've got your ISO standard like 14443A, and then you build NFC on top of that as a language for us to communicate. So like we're humans, right? And then we have different varieties of humans all over the planet. And then NFC is we can both speak English and we can both speak Portuguese. And so it's defining a language for us to speak, which would be NFC.
Yeah. And that's a whole organization as well. So they really claimed in the word NFC, and they're really good at marketing it, and they have a little logo with it. So they're taking the piece of a puzzle quite well.
I want to talk about the hardware for a moment, Iceman. And I think the first time that I saw like this in play as a penetration tester are the proximity cards for building access, right? And then you would see like even like on the news or on a TV show that they would follow around some of the hackers, and they'd have a backpack and they'd have this like really weird looking square antenna, and they would go by people who had access cards and they would be able to clone it, right? And we would talk about the threat in that high level without kind of digging down into details. But the hardware has evolved over time that allows us to both read and clone cards. Can you talk about kind of the evolution of the hardware?
Oh yeah. Now this is a little bit funny though, because it's called weaponized reader nowadays, and you can blame the militaries and those law enforcements for that, for this loaded language, because they like that word. But there is a magic talk on DEF CON and Black Hat 2012, I think it was, and I'm gonna look it up here because I have it. And it's called no, 2013. It's called RFID Hacking Live, Live Free or RFID Hard by Francis Brown. And that's
and just a note there is a link to the GitHub of awesome RFID talks that I put in the show notes for this episode so people could go back and reference it. And Iceman, you sent that to me, so thank you.
Yeah, that's a perfect list to have. We curated a number of talks there over the years, so it's easy to find it. But that is the number one talk that starts off this whole pen test and weaponizer reader. So what you do is, if you don't want to develop your stuff, because HID and all these companies, corporations have patents, and they protect those patents. If you don't want to get in a problem with that by building your own reader, by saying, oh yeah, we have a patent for doing this, you actually take, this is the genius part, we just take a normal reader of yours, and then we read the output of those signals that comes out, because it talks vegan over the wires that comes out from the reader. The reader just comes up, pops up, do a set procedures of commands, asking the card, give me this, decode that, and then it sends it over the wires to the door control in the back end. So what he did, Francis Brown, was that he powered that up, a normal reader, powered that up with a battery. You sniffed up the tracker of those wires, and you got the credential out of the card without doing anything. And you got also when you have these long read range readers, they also have bigger range of reading, because this is normally close, but bigger antenna, more power. You can get up to 60 centimeters. I don't know what that is in freedom units, but
freedom units.
That's awesome. And Iceman, this is the Tastic RFID Thief, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
That one.
Yeah.
So that's the oldest, the first one that came out, and then you added to that was this BLE key and ESP key, which you just puts on that. It's smaller and ESP based, and then you just read off the WAN, and you have a Wi-Fi and a web server on it, so you can just remotely connect to it as well. It's super simple to weaponize a read like that one, and it's after that talk, that's basically every pen tester red team in the damn world in the industry started doing that, because it's so highly effective. You put that stuff in your backpack or in your binder. You go to the elevator, you go to the coffee house, you go to the toilet. I even see people doing that hack on a toilet. I'm like, oh, that's a shame. You should be, you should be, you should be safe.
That's pretty shitty.
Yeah. And that was with a specific reader.
One of the readers. Hold on.
Is it what the HID Maxi Prox 52, 53 something?
Yeah, I think I've got a variation of that I bought.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
That's the one.
So this is a long range reader for parking and entries. This is low frequency. This is HID Prox 2. So you see by the bigness of this antenna coil here, you can see that you can turn out things. You can power it up to 24 volts to get some more distance. Here's the reader module in here that treats it all well. But you just read the signal, 2 for power, and then green and white, and this is an ESP key there. And that's all. You need to just hook this up to a battery, and this is a weaponized reader. And you get this 60 centimeters of read range. So you can do then, you just walk by anyone that has such a tag. That's a very legacy old tag that shouldn't be in use anymore.
But that lets you read it. Then you still need to transfer that to a new card.
Yes,
correct?
And that's where come things like the Proxmark. What I did, figuring all the formats out and decode it into facility code and card numbers, and then you put it on to a cloning card. That's for LF. It's called T5577. So instead of making, all these different technologies other companies had, someone in China came up with this, or Atmel came up with this great idea. How about we make a card that can simulate all these different technologies in low frequency, and we just sell that as a basis for you? So they did, but it turns out that's perfect when you want to clone things, because you can just tell it to become an ASCII based LF tag or an FSK or whatever. So that was
I
kind of
gotcha. So it's a card that can speak multiple languages, to Larry's
Yes.
analogy. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. And see, I always thought it was the other way around, that Atmel developed these cards, and HID said, we don't want to go develop our own stuff. We'll just use these because they're commodity available. But
I don't know what came first there. I don't have an insight of HID or Atmel, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Atmel goes like,
Either way, because of what was the T55, 57, and there was another subsequent model too that, can emulate HID effectively.
Oh yeah.
And now HID is the company that creates the access control systems.
Yep.
HID is
One of the companies, right?
Huge
HID, yeah.
identification.
HID
It's a big one here in the US. Yes, it's
Yep. Yeah, and what it's and you're I love that. Oh, these are some older stuff, and we shouldn't be using them anymore. But the HID procs stuff actually captures about 70 to 80% of all the access control space here in the U.S.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Just for record
Yeah.
to say, there's no security in that card.
No.
There's no. You can just read it out. There's no security in it.
Not.
So if
Not-
you capture
where
it,
does-
you clone it. You can actually make a clone by taking a picture of a card.
Where does Mifare Classic come into the picture?
So now we're going from a low frequency into the high frequency. It's the same thing there. You take a reader that can read Mifare Classic or this R90 from HID that can read multiple different high frequency technology. You just put on that ESP key and a battery, and you have a weaponized reader, and you just get the credential data out of it. And Mifare Classic is the number one product that's most successful. It sold billions since 1994. NXP, it was Philips from the beginning, then NXP bought it up, and it's a massive, I argue that it's a massive success. It's a huge success. I had a discussion with Philip Turvin about, he used to work for NXP, and he says his claims like it's a crappy system, it's a crappy product because it was bad crypto in its defects. And I claim from marketing perspective, from sales, I would argue that this is the best card ever. You see this this is a Mifare Classic, by the way. You can't see it by the look of it like that, but it's everywhere. Everywhere you go in the world, the number one card you're going to find out there is Mifare Classic. And NXP or Philips ran their own crypto. So some smart guys in Germany and a smart team in Holland from academics world was Carsten Knoll and Henrik Plutz, and then was Roel and Garcia, the academia per part from it. They made some attacks about this 2006, 2007. They made some talks at CCC, if you know that German Chaos Computer Club Congress.
And they did the research. They basically decapped the chip.
Yeah, he did.
Which is pretty awesome.
Fucking awesome, So you just delayer it and we read up the ROM mask things. It's like Travis Godspeed. I think you had him on
he
before,
did some
right?
stuff like that.
He does stuff like that also. And Ken Shell.
But decapping the chip, there's multiple ways to do it, right? Some used acid actually to melt away the top of a chip, right? When you look at a CPU for a PC, let's say, it has that gray cap to it. You melt that away and you get at the insides of that. And did they do that to expose the RF field, or were they soldering stuff on there?
I think I have a decapped card laying around here.
Ooh.
Dangerous. Dangerous.
Nice.
And Paul, arguably not to get to the RF field for that, but to inspect the circuit design.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
that they could verify what the transistor, all the transistor layout was,
and I also
all
just
that
want
type
to
of
put caution out to our audience. We've talked about this before, but it always should come with while Iceman's looking for his decap chip. Don't try this at home. If you're decapping a chip using any of the methods, there's varying levels of danger, and it can cause physical
I'm sorry for this.
harm.
I had one.
No, it's okay.
It's somewhere here. It's gone.
I was just putting out the warning on it that if you're going to decap chips, don't hurt yourself. Don't think like you heard it on the podcast. I'm going to go get some acid and start, melting caps.
Mandy's got a comment here.
Oh, I wanted to just clarify what decapping meant, the way you were using it.
Who won't take that one?
I'll take it.
Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, if you look at a traditional sort of like integrated circuit chip, put it over the camera here, the little black square there,
Mhm.
it's effectively there's a really tiny circuit board in there,
Mhm.
and it's like an epoxy type stuff. You're effectively removing the top layers of that epoxy to expose
Okay.
the circuit in. So you're
Okay.
removing the cap of that
Right.
integrated circuit, so you
Okay.
can get it under a super crazy microscope and look at all the traces and all that type of stuff.
All right, I found it.
Nice.
All right, cool. So what you see here, imagine this. So if you take this for a little plastic card and put it in an acetone bath for like an hour, you will see that it will peel away, and you will see this antenna that's round, this the coil, and this is the chip, the IC. So this particular one has a little extra dot protecting layer, which is then we have to take away first. We do that with phosphorus acid, apparently, and then after that you've you have opened up and made it free. You can now use another acid in order to decap different layers onto that IC. So this is the size of it. It's really small in that sense. So yeah. Here's a different one that looks a little bit differently. You can't see it, of course. Sorry about that.
Right, and so, but that was the fundamentals of how they ended up breaking the encryption for Mifare Classic, and then there was other standards that came after that fixed those problems, correct?
Oh yeah, of course. NFC, it's not.
Well, air quotes fixed. Yeah.
In some cases, air quotes fixed, right? Yeah. So, so Iceman, what the ultimate failure in Mifare Classic was the Crypto 1, and the random number generator was time based to reset. So effectively, every time the card was powered, it was reset, and then the nonce values were predictable because of the time based stuff.
You're very right, and it's also small. It was only 16 bits, so it was repeating within 0.7 seconds. So 700 milliseconds, and the hell turn around, so you can actually just get the same nonce out if you're very accurately. And it was much easier if you start from zero. You turn off the power and it started from this exact initialization state. So yeah,
and turns out we know how to turn off the power with RFID because it's all field based.
It's all field based, and you tell it to yourself. Just turn off. You can do much more funnier things if you cut the power like that. It's something that we call tear-off attacks. That was you can tear it off. It's almost very similar to glitching, but it's not. It's not glitching in that sense when it comes to tear-off attacks. But yes, so what they did in Crypto 1 is exactly what you said. That's what two of the bugs. It was like 4. There's also that they also send a NAC request, also leaking crypto data. And some smart academics, Rule and Garcia, they figure out how to recover keys from there. And from there on, the whole community started building up. So you see people like Adam Laurie and Sam Kankar was there and other ones. And they improved the whole Proxmox scenario, improving those attacks, the dark side attacks, making it work against. It was rough, but it worked. And you can prove a point to say, yes, I can get the keys out. And now when I have the keys out, I can read out the memory. Like I said before, it's just a memory stick. So with the keys, I can now extract all the memory. It was another an attack called nested attack, which Nefemba, I think it's Croatia, Serbia, group, that they made an improvement, so it's even faster. If you crack the first key with dark side, use the nested attack to get the other keys. So on a normal Mifare Classic card, on a 1K card, there's 32 keys. So you take the first one with dark side, 25 seconds, and then the nested took about 30 seconds to get the other 31 keys. And with those, you had a complete access to the card, and you could make any kind of copy in that sense. Final protection mode was the UID, the unique identifier that all cards have. It's like, say, yes, this card is unique. Then, it's like everything else. Chinese people come up with, that's a stupid thing to have. I need my copy because I need to have access to my elevator or escalator. So they made up something that we call now in the market the magic cards. Magic card is, as you say, it has special properties. And one of the first properties was that it could change the UID. The unique identifier that cannot be changed is changeable. So that's also called UID changeable. And then it's also called the Chinese backdoor cards. If you ever heard that concept, that's where it's from. Also, Mifare Classic based.
Yep. So the point of the unique ID was that it was supposed to be fixed per card, so that each card had a unique identifier that could not be changed. And Mifare's recommendation was to use that unique ID and the key together to have key diversification, so that every key was not. So if you use the key for every card in your access control system, the data was not going to be the same for every card that you read. So the family's leaving to go do stuff, and they're saying, so key diversification. So you had some uniqueness per card, but a shared key across potentially an organization type of thing. But then ultimately, every key for every card would be different. So if you couldn't change the UID, you couldn't potentially decrypt data and or provide that same authentication, because the key would be different on your new card.
And what in particular created the uniqueness per card?
It was set in production, so it's like fused. Okay. So it was created, the program, this unique ID, they were in control of program. It was 4 bytes, 32 bits, and then it's also, another one is 7 bytes, and the largest one is 10 bytes. But as you mentioned before you delve too much into the details of this one here, we can talk for hours about that one, is what you said, what protection came out. So 2010 NXP came out with the Evolution 1, or EV1, the Mifare Classic EV1. They added a signature to it, and they improved the PRNG, and the bugs that was so pestered before was counted, and now it was secure again. Or was it? So 2014, the same academic researcher Rule, he said, you know what? I said to you guys that there's a bug in your system, and it's in the parity bits that you have this issue, and you haven't sorted that out. So, and this can never be fixed. Well, NSP apparently had said that, well, if you don't see it, you don't believe it. So apparently took that face value, whatever it was, and then he had a student, since he's a professor at the uni, has a student there called Aram, and they took that research and made what is called the hard nested attack. And you do need to have a known key first, and then you can extract or recoup the second key or the other keys from it. Now, in the infinite wisdom when we did the EV1 is that in order to get the signature data out of a card, we use some spare memory and in sectors that doesn't exist, but we also use a fixed key. And once that key was out, everything that was needed to recover the keys for Mifare Classic EV1 was there. This attack, however, takes much longer time. It takes about 15 minutes per key, if you're unlucky. But that was improved as well. So nowadays it's about 5-6 minutes per card.
Just still relatively short.
Now, Iceman, there's a difference between, let's just use a hotel as an example, between cloning a card so that I get a card issued from my room, I can clone that, and that only has access to my room. But then there are other attacks that let me derive a master key, how does that work? How does a master key work in that scenario?
I think Larry was just into it. He was talking about that one.
Because they share the same key, just a different unique identifier to derive a new key.
Yes. Yep. So basically what they did finally, when you derive keys, we call it KDFs. We call it key diversification functions. Mm-hmm. So you take something unique for a card, the UID, and then you take a secure crypto like CMAC or HMAC or whatever you want to do. You put those data in there and says, I have a global master key, or I have a site diversified key for every customer I have. And then we put that together and pop goes the weasel and I get out a diversified key. Meaning that all keys are diversified, like Larry said, and they're also securely created events. And it's not made up by default keys. It's not made up by humans typing something in, and has all those things like Hashcat likes to benefit from. So this is where it comes crossover for Hashcat and the password cracking. His crossover again, and it is. The funny thing is, we actually are one of the developers there improving the high-tech 2 attack code. So we actually have some hash code, state machines, and all that stuff in the Proxima code. So yes, very nice to have that. However, in the password cracking world, they believe that it's generated by humans, and by that such designs we have some flaws in it. We have in our world more like known key pairs, so we know that what the output will be. So if that's our password hash, we can see the key accessing the card from Mifare Classic is a hash. We can see that in that sense, and then we know the input, and we know we just have to do enormous brute force in that sense. So that's the crossover. But the password people don't think it's pure password yet, though. However, but it's a crossover.
Gotcha.
So for hotel keys, it's going to be like one great talk this year, the Unsoftlock talk about Dormacaba's hacks there, how we did that one. But don't think that has so much to do with KDF and how we generate the keys for this one.
It's a different attack.
Yeah. Yes, it's a different attack.
Yeah, Paul, we talked about that one on the show a couple months ago when they just had started talking about it, about having to query the reader for some material to generate keys and some of that type of stuff. So it's clearly come a little bit further since we talked about it months ago.
Well, people have been cloning hotel key cards for some time, and from my understanding, Iceman, people come to you and ask you for help, and oftentimes you had a funny story about accessing the pool.
And I have a follow up to this one. Too, so.
Yeah. So the Dormacaba. The Dormacaba key diversification function has been known for years. I myself have been having it for 6 years, so I was happy with it. You don't have to go and tell everybody that you have something that's fun to have. It was given to me by someone, and what that enables me is I can generate all the keys without having to crack it. I don't have to crack the key. I can just generate all the keys that needed to dump the card. So this story is about when I was at Black Hat Asia in 23 in Singapore. So in Singapore, there's a known famous hotel up there. It's called MSB, I think.
Marina Bay Sands?
MBS. Marina Bay Sands, right? It's this famous free high-rise with a pool, looks like a ship on top of it. It has an infinity pool on top of it that is to die for. That is one of the bucket lists. If you ever go to Singapore, try to get into that pool. You can't get into that pool because you have to be a guest of a hotel. You see where we're going on this one right now. So this is Dark Matter. I'm going to call him out on it. So Dark Matter is working on a knock on Black Hat Asia. All right. And it's like, yeah, I bet with a friend of mine that I can get into the pool, So I got a copy of he has a key, but he can't read out the keys because he doesn't know how to do that. And it's like, I got my flipper, it doesn't work, but Iceman, can you sort me out? It's like, maybe that depends.
Yeah, it's like, hold on, I have my bathing suit. Do I get in the pool too?
I did actually have some great.
There you go. This is a good exchange. Yeah, this is an even trade, in my opinion.
So if I get one of your cards, I can sort you out.
Right.
So it comes by, just read out the key, clone it to a Matic card, right, and then it's you're now a guest, so you could just go out there and enter the pool. I get some pictures some hours later. He's on the infinite pool. Right. It's great up there, man. So yeah,
and that's that's a harmless. It's harmless, right? You're going to swim in a pool, right? But where I think our larger concern is, what do nefarious people do if they have this capability, right? And then it comes into, how do we disclose these things responsibly? I think this is a case, certainly with these access cards, we'll just limit it to that for now, that we have to use great caution as to what we release and whose hands they get in, because people could do really bad things with it.
It sure does. It's the moral thing. I always call it that you're walking on a thin razor sharp edge about about moral. It's one of the first stories I have when people doing things is like I had a talk at Black Alps in 2018, and after the talk, someone comes up to me. It's like, "Oh, great! I love your work, man. I've been having free laundry ever since." And I'm like, "Wow, I don't know how to react to that one yet because I was
Right.
It's like, yeah. How about you don't rip off a small vendor?
Yeah. I mean, we would call that basically stealing, right? That's
It is
yeah.
stealing. I'm like,
it's stealing, right?
okay.
It's no, yeah.
Unless it's that vendor we were talking. I mean, not saying do this illegally, not at all. But that story we had a while back about the vendor that had how many millions of washer and dryers across the world that were
Oh,
being
Yeah,
um
it was. I think it was largely used on universities and colleges here in
on
the U.S. Yeah,
and it was being bypassed, but that was millions upon millions of units like across the world, I thought. So
and that wasn't RFID. That was a different attack
yeah.
against the API. But still,
yeah, but
stealing is
still,
stealing, right?
It's still laundry.
and,
It's still,
and
Still money
Still
laundering.
laundering.
yeah.
it's still laundry.
Speaking of stealing, I put in the Riverside chat a link to an RFID tag, and this has come up. A coworker of mine, Edwin, brought this up, and because he discovered this one. There's some high-end folks that distill liquor that put RFID tags on their bottles so that when you open the foil on the bottles, it destroys the RFID tag. The RFID tag is there to provide authenticity that, say, this bottle of Pappy Van Winkle that you are purchasing, or
Yeah.
this $3,000 bottle of Japanese whiskey that you're buying, is in
Or
fact
wine. Or wine. Did you? I don't know if you saw the
yep,
documentary
same,
on the wine. Right, there was a
yep,
huge problem where people were counterfeiting
counterfeiting wine,
wine, and it doesn't
yep.
surprise me that they're trying to use this as some authenticity check.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So this thing exists to provide authenticity of your wine, and that there are going to be groups that are going to want to put lower quality alcohol in bottles with
Yep.
cloned labels with these RFID tags to verify to prove that this is the real stuff because they have cloned something from a real one. My real question about this is, hey, we're talking about stealing here, but going into a tag that you don't know about, what's the process for figuring out what the security mechanisms? How do you go about reverse engineering this? And more importantly, what's your process for doing something like this?
Wow, we're jumping much now, aren't we?
Paul said he wanted this to be technical, so
That's
here we
right.
are.
Just figure out the whole universe in the next 20
Yeah.
minutes. Let's go.
And I don't want to know, like, oh yeah, so we do this and like the specifics. Like, what's your thought process around how to go about something like this? Like higher level about what's the process?
Well, when it comes to tamper tags like that one, there is apparently a whole tamper village at DEF CON that has these chemicals to remove the glue and to open it. And the RFID tag is normally you buy those, but I would start is to buy those tags yourself. So you see what the tech is in there. Is there anything known about it? How does the tamper work? Right?
Yep.
So in the ones you talk about there, one of them is cuts the antenna. That means that you can solder on a new antenna on the tag and it would work, right? Some of them triggers a fuse. That's much harder. You can change that fuse inside the IC. But then it's a question: can we get it with, like the tamper evidence village at DEF CON? They teach you how to remove things without triggering the fuse, triggering the tamper, right? So then you would have an untampered thing. The next one is okay, can I read out the data? What kind of data it is? Usually on those tamper tags, it's NDEF messages. Go figures. And it goes to a shop saying, and it has this unique ID of a tag of a tamper, or like we talked before, and it registers in the API that this has been tampered with, or this has not been tampered with, or activated, like opened or tampered. And then you would look into that and you go like, okay, so how can I do this? Technically, this is where RFID goes over to the next level again, because now the normal way of attacking that one would be to attack the APIs. of a system, right? So this comes into pure hacking now. You do web hacking, you do RPI researching about that to see what way can we duplicate or change the IDs in the database somewhere so it doesn't map with the new ones you want, or how it maps to your new ones. And if you want to have a tag or a tamper tag that has unique UID changeable properties and doesn't fuse when you trigger them, there is always someone who's going to be developing them for you or manufacturing them. It just comes down to how much money you're willing to spend on it. So the rumor is, if you want a pneumatic tag, is that you have to pay about $10,000 and you get a wafer off those. Then you have to put it on RFID antennas on it, and you put it in a card as well. But that's small peanuts compared to what you want. And then you have it. So in the pen testers world and red teamers, they usually want to have a magic card for the Pico Pass or for the Mifare Deathfire cards, because that's the latest and greatest and hardest. Same thing with the COS cards. And then they want something like that. But nobody is willing publicly to pay that money to make sure that that comes to market. And until someone wants to do that, you're not going to find one of those. But okay, I think I'm going on a tangent here from many things. But so my way of attacking a card is like identifying it. What kind of technology is it first? Do I know anything about that card before? In my case, I know very much about very many tags. And another part is getting access to information like data sheets or spreadsheets or FCC ID database. Apparently, is one of the best databases in the world to get stuff out, right? Same thing as normal hacking. You do the basic research to get the knowledge about it. Then you start looking into the academia. What kind of research has been done? Is there any glitching going on? Has this been a known thing? When it comes to RFID things, I think I pretty much know everything that's to know about it. I cover that one. So for me, it's not that much of research. And if I need to know something, I would ask someone who's done it. That's the beauty of being an Iceman, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to transition to cars. And because there's been a lot of the Flipper Zero really shined a light on this whole thing. And there's actually a funny story that I shared with you, Iceman, that like I think is a good kind of introduction to people. Must come up to you at certain points and be like, how can I clone a car key fob, right? And so my brother-in-law locked his keys in his trunk. And this particular model of cars, Toyota Camry, in certain model years, actually allowed the user to lock their keys in the trunk. So the trunk closes. I believe the key is not in close enough proximity to anything in the car that enables you to then open the trunk. So if you manage to get the door open and push the trunk latch, it still doesn't work because of other safety mechanisms, because like the key's not near me, so I'm not opening the trunk. Now, later model years, they changed it so the trunk actually has a sensor that if your key fob is in the trunk, it won't let you close the trunk, which is awesome, right? But this largely, cars are using RFID technology. Is that true?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's all encompassed in some type of RFID technology, basically.
I think modern cars goes on the name multiband. There operates. That's why Flipper shines in those moments right now, because it also has a software-defined radio built in. So for cars, you have entry system and keyless ignition system. So you have getting into the car, locking the door, and then starting up the car.
So it's a separate protocol for starting the car versus gain X, obviously, right?
So that's why you have, when you have key fob or something like that, you can press a little button 100 meters away or 50 meters away, and the door will open, because it's a radio signal. Usually it's 413 or 344 megahertz that it's there, and you can get that trigger. And then when you get closer by, it also triggers a low frequency chirp, or opposite, so that you present the key fob just too near to the lock, and it says, "Oh, here's an LF." Now I assume a key is near the lock. Now I will send a signal on 1344 megahertz to out and see if I get a response from the key fob saying, "Yes, it's me," and then I will unlock. So that's my multi-band systems on modern cars. The older cars, they didn't have that.
Or Kias are Hyundais that didn't have the, well, what did they call that in those cars? They didn't put in the ignition protection. The chip doesn't talk to the ignition system as an extra. So all you need to do is be able to turn the key, and you can start the car even if you don't have the key fob. And what did they call that? It was the ignition. Canada requires that all cars sold in Canada have the ignition protection. So the key fob has to talk to the chip in the car to start it, right? Kia goes, well, we can, or Hyundai said we can save money, and they didn't include that. And that's what gave birth to the Kia boys stealing cars all over the place.
Yeah. So one thing that people go and ask me is two things that people ask me almost every time, and it's can you clone? Or can I clone my payment card, my EMV card, my Visa card, my
Right.
Mastercard, and can you clone my car key? And it's a solid no to both of those questions because one, I don't want to be involved in fraud, and I don't want to
Correct.
be involved in car
Right.
theft. So now, if you would have asked me, sorry, I'm very curious how this works because I'm curious on learning things and understanding things, I might have had a different answer, but
Right.
it's a rather different story of doing that. So this is where you see all these videos with Flipper Zero, and we talked about morale and saying like, is this good power to have open for everybody, or is it bad power to have people? You know how this obnoxious thing opening the Tesla charging door, things like that. And
yeah, and that's really just obnoxious because after a certain model year, the charging door just closes on its own.
Yeah, but need some updates to it as well.
Yeah.
But car hacking, this is another crossover. Car hacking is a big thing. It's a big competitions out there making big bucks, much better than bug bounties and stuff like that. It's a big thing. Car hacking, CAN bus, EC, everything like that. It's big and it's really interesting. Getting access to a car and starting it, it's big business, big money. So it's really big interest into it. Academia, they have a lot of teams and research into it, and private corporations like, we only work for Pentest or whatever, they do the same thing. Another thing is also charging stations.
I've seen that. I think it was the ZDI did must have done like an event and released a whole bunch of stuff about charging stations, a bunch of vulnerabilities.
Oh, I'm not surprised. They
They're
apparently not
they're
designed
small embedded
by
computers.
security aware people.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to just go back to hardware for a moment. So the differences in the hardware from Proxmark, the Chameleon, and the Flipper Zero all have different capabilities, right? And can do different things.
Yes. Different purposes, I would say. So Proxmark shines, it's laying on a disk. It's a research tool. You look at things and you use it for that one. Well, there's been some tries and improvements to make it mobile by putting a battery on it and stuff and work it all in standalone mode, but it's not good enough. You can hook it up to an Android phone, but yeah. The Chameleon Ultra is a much, much, much smaller device. I don't know if you have one, but it looks like this. This is how big it is. This is as big as it is. This one here has 8 slots, so you can combine it with low frequency and high frequency. And it's the battery lasts forever. It's a BLE app into a BLE chip, so you can talk with iOS and Android apps to it, upload all the dumps to it. And this device simulates genuine cards, right? Look at that, he got one. Which one do you have? Got the black one, or do you have a...
Yep.
Yeah.
The cases.
The silicone case, yes.
Yeah, silicone
Yeah,
case.
it gets scratches very much on that one. It's epoxy thing. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
There's way too much stuff in this drawer.
Well, I see that. I see lots of Proxmark stuff as well, big antennas and high copy X.
You got to collect them all.
Well, and the iCopy is the screen with the battery power that sits basically on top of the Proxmark platform, right?
More or less, yes. It's one of those.
And like you go old school, right?
Yeah, now we're talking. What's the green one? Is that Radio War or is that XF PGAs?
Oh, that's a good question. That is probably one of the original.
Rice Corp
ones. Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, they went away. I don't know what happened to them. But back to the Flipper Zero. Flipper Zero has software-defined radio and has a lot more interfaces, right? So it has this I/O pins, GPIO pins. It has this low frequency, high frequency, Bluetooth, and it can do USB, bad USB thing stuff. So it's much more versatile and it's mobile, right?
Mm.
So that form factor you can just carry around everywhere, right? Everyday carry, right? So this is what happened last year. We were speaking about morale about that. I'm gonna avoid that one and just say this is what happened if you have GPI pins. People develop things like this extra add-on boards. So what this is here, this chip here, this is just a normal smart card reader. But there's an app called Cedar to the Flipper world. And if you have a NARD, this is called a NARD, this little add-on board. And a genuine HID SAM, this is a secure access module from HID, genuine. So this is loaded up with a key material that is used in all their products for keys, reading keys, fobs like CEOs, Mifare Classic, or everything like that. And if you combine these ones together and talk to the chip like you do, you can actually tell it to do what it should do, like a reader does. Give me the PAX data that is stored on this card, and then you get the facility code and card number out of it. And this is available for Flipper and it's been out there for a year. And it gives tremendous power because you can extract the latest, the PAX data, the more important data from the latest and the most secure cards from HID right now.
And does that let you then write a new card as well?
Oh yeah, the Flipper Zero, the Cedar app, it does that too as well. So
it does that too.
So you can do this downgrade attacks. You can put it onto like an old iClass card or
I see.
T5577 card. So that's what we call downgrade attacks. So you take a high security card and you put the stuff onto a low secure card, which we have full control of. It's very similar like the payment cards has. Payment cards, have you seen any talks about that? Payment cards, how we do downgrade attacks on those?
I have not. I've heard of them. I couldn't recall which ones.
So basically, it's the same thing. So the reader talks to the card talks back and says, what kind of options do you have? The card says, I support this and this and this. All right, says the reader, great, let's do the highest of what you support. If you do a man in the middle attack, you can say, no, I only support the lowest standard or plain text, more or less. The reader goes, interesting, let's do that. Then you get all the data out that you need, and then you can make interesting things with that as well. So that's downgrade attacks. You take something that's secure, you pretend to say, I'm not very secure. This is also known in the other talk that was made last year from DEF CON, opening a door from the other side of a continent, half a continent away, where we do relay attacks, where you relay information from a card and you send it over the internet and you simulate it to a door reader, way a while. And you say, we support the longest delay time so we can talk and communicate, because this takes time to talk between those two cards, the card and the reader, and relaying between there. So you do the same thing there. You downgrade an option because it's available and it's built into the protocol and standard to say which timeouts do you support. And now you start to see another way of how I look at hacking and how smart people, not me, sorry, how really smart people before me thought. That's the proper way to say it. How they go like, yeah, but it's in the standard. I can just tell it to, give me something simpler instead, and it will do it because that's the basic of a standard. So understanding the standard and realize how hackers think, that was not included when they generate or develop those standards. I can tell you that it's secure and it's following all the CIL 5+ and 6+ of what do you call that, verifications or certifications. But if you don't understand how hackers actually look at things, you tend to end up in these situations. And there's no excuse today to not use fully encrypted communications. There's no excuse today because the ICs today are powerful enough to do very advanced crypto. It's just mind-boggling.
If folks have listened to this interview, Iceman, and they're like, where do I start? How do I get going with all this stuff? What recommendations do you have?
Well, I started with a Proxmark because that's me. That doesn't mean that you have to do it as well. Do what we have at home. I started out, I didn't have any gear. What you see around me nowadays, it's like crazy, but that's 10 years of collecting gears, right? Like Larry. You know?
Yes.
But I started out with a Proxmog, right? And I started out with the cards I had available, and I was curious and read and started doing what I can
Do you
do.
recommend getting some of the knockoffs on AliExpress at a much lower
Hell
cost?
yeah!
Okay, because that's what I did. I was like, I want to experiment, and so for like a fraction of the cost, I can order them. I put the Iceman firmware on it, and it worked. I was like, cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty of open source. You can make even cheaper
Right.
stuff. Otherwise, when you buy that, you get quality based on that. So it's a give and take. But we have a shopping channel that we make sure that if you shop from those, that's a great gear.
Okay, so on your Discord, you have a shopping channel.
Yeah.
Sweet.
When
Okay.
when your company is buying, support the good stuff. Don't
Yeah,
let
I
it
agree.
Out of your
I agree.
pocket.
Yeah. Hacker
Right.
Warehouse is a great one to order from. Garrett runs a great shop.
Hacker Warehouse is a great shop, man. And G-Man, yeah, he just released a book, by the way, didn't he?
I think he did. Yes,
think
he
he
did. Yeah.
He's gonna have a book signing on in DEF CON, I heard, on Black Hat. So that's cool. Yeah, nah, G-Man, G is cool. I like him. Hack 5, great stuff. OMG cable, MG, and that stuff. Oh man, they have everything. No, you can do that. Anyway, back to the gear. You don't have to. If you have a smartphone, you can start where you just you drive a NFC tools. You just try to read it. If you have an Android phone, it's a little bit better because it can do a little bit more. So you start with that one, and you get curious. So there's a lot of people like biohackers. So we haven't touched on the biohacking scene. Where people
we didn't
do the
talk about that
implants.
yet.
That's what I was gonna.
Larry's got one in his hand. Adrian does as well.
Yeah, Cyborg Unite.
Mine is really old though. EM4102.
Oh,
Globally unique.
wow.
Yeah, because we did that in like 2007 in my kitchen.
Yeah.
We implanted a chip into Larry. Yeah.
Yep.
I will never forget that.
And Adam Laurie, Major Malfunction, actually cloned it on stage at ShmooCon 2.
Right.
Yeah, Adam Laurie is he's the goat, man. I don't know if you have an option to talk to that guy. He's just
I've had him on the show, but it was years ago. We got to bring him back.
You have to bring
sure.
him back.
Yeah.
He's just such a humble British fella.
He is such a nice person. Yeah,
I love him. He's the best.
Yeah.
No, he did some awesome hacks. It's just amazing hacks he's done. And he, everywhere you go, Adam Laurie's Major Malfunction names just shows up in the.
Yeah.
It's just
so
there.
you have a shopping channel. Start out getting some hardware. It doesn't have to be the most expensive, latest, greatest stuff. Obviously, get the Iceman firmware, and then there's a link to all the talks. Are there a tutorial somewhere that you like, Iceman, or?
Oh, that's the hardest part. We usually say in this field, in the Proxmox world, we say learn the tools of a trade, the hardware.
Yep.
It's bite the dust, bite the bullets. It's read, understand, read some more, test and try and hard and error, and you will see if you put the effort in, people will see that you're putting the effort in, and they will carry up. But if you go like, oh, I just want to clone it, why don't you tell me how to do it? It's like,
No.
Sorry, dude, you can go somewhere else. So
that's not how I was brought up either.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's like,
you got to show that you're willing to put the effort in.
Yeah,
Totally
exactly. You have
agree.
to show effort, right? But we used to talk about gear. You can actually buy a Flipper Zero as well. It's great. It's a great hacking tool to start with. It's a great stepping stone. That's what I call it. You try it. You see, oh, that's a simple. It's because it's made to be simple. It makes all this hard stuff look simple, but it's not simple if you learn and understand what's going on. And this is where you differentiate from being a hacker and as a user. So if you're a hacker, you want to know how it works and how did they do that. And I think just go with that. It doesn't matter that much, And then you must buy some magic stuff.
The Flipper Zero's the gateway drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's some more resources in the show notes for this episode. You have a YouTube channel. Iceman. So you have a regular show? Do you do a regular show now?
Wow. See, I do things for the fun of it. And I started last year when I quit my job as a CTO. I said, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to monetize. I'm going to have some subs and like a goal. I'm going to make 100 videos on YouTube and see what happens. So I spent a year now with that one and tried to make videos with content that talks about things and realized that I can't talk too much about things and, and not spoon feeding and try to talk about things and still keep it legal because, YouTube doesn't like hackers. telling
No, I agree.
how to hack things.
Mhm.
So yeah, I try to do that. I'm not professional like you guys are, but I'm having fun and doing things. And if people like what I do, that would be awesome if you look at it in order. You guys are much
Awesome.
better, so yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but your
So
YouTube channel is in the show notes as well as some other resources.
like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. And I know we're running short on time. We could talk a lot more, Iceman, so we'll have to bring you back. But I wanted to thank you for being on the show today. Thank you, Larry and Mandy. And thanks to everyone for listening and watching. Larry, take us out.
Over and RFID.